San Francisco 49ers, Philadelphia Eagles. As we record this, and now this is coming to you Friday, kind of mid-morning Pacific, mid-afternoon there on the East Coast. It's a very juiced 2.5. Now, threes are popping and then they're getting bought up, and then threes are popping and then they're getting bought up. So by the time you watch this thing could be toggling all over the place. So just know this is as of recording right now. 46.5 is the prevailing total, though there is 146 out there. I'm going to start with you, Adam, because we know that the 49ers are Steven's team. So I'll let him take us home here with this one. This thing opened at 1. It immediately got bought. It went to 1.5, went to 2, then gets to 2.5, stuck at 2.5 the majority of the week. Then we saw it hit 3 and get immediately taken. We saw it get 3, immediately taken. Then it sat at 2.5 yet again. Now here comes Friday, and now we're starting to see those threes pop again.
This is the game that has the most of my interest. I find this matchup of these two defenses in particular to be fascinating. And Matt, I have to give a little bit of honesty when we talk about all those bets cashing last week. I thought Dallas, San Francisco was a dead over, which did not at any way come close, in large part because of both turnovers and because of San Francisco settling for field goals in a number of spots. But as we look forward to this week, all of the chatter all week long has been around, is this the week that Brock Purdy falls down because he's going against an Eagles defense that has 70 sacks? Okay, fine. It's reasonable, but we've also been doing the when is Brock Purdy going to fall off thing for quite a while now. So I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just kind of tired of doing it in this particular spot. And I want to look at the other side of this. And I want to talk about Jalen Hurts for a second, because Jalen Hurts last week was not asked to do very much. The Eagles dominated that game from start to finish. The Giants couldn't accomplish a single thing on the offensive side of the ball, and Jalen Hurts really was able to hand off and let that road grading offensive line do most of the work. And we know that San Francisco is the number 1 rush defense in football by DVOA for the season. So that being said, if Jalen Hurts is put into a spot to be the reason Philadelphia wins or does not win in the passing game, is he healthy enough to be able to do that? We didn't answer that question last week. What we got was Jalen Hurts still talking about how his shoulder isn't right, but it's good enough, and talking about how it wasn't good, right, but good enough 2 weeks ago. Well, that might not even be necessarily about him being able to throw the football, but what's going to happen when Jalen Hurts takes that first good hit against a San Francisco pass rush that is going to get to him at some point in this game? So I look at the situation we're in right now with the Niners and the Eagles and say teaser leg is what makes the most sense to me, because of the fact that San Francisco's defense, I think, is going to be able to do enough to slow the Philadelphia run to put this onto the shoulders of Jalen Hurts. And you know what? Maybe Devontae Smith is able to take advantage of some of the secondary cornerback matchups with San Francisco. We know that it's been talked about, again, all week long, that San Francisco can be beaten deep, and that really is the one weakness of this defense. So is that where Philadelphia finds the leak? Entirely possible. I also look at this game and say the Philadelphia Eagles are a team that has not pulled away from anyone except the New York Giants all year long. And so the teaser leg on San Francisco makes a lot of sense to me because of that as well. If you're inclined to play the total, to me, if you're playing the Purdy narrative, if you're playing any of what I just talked about with Jalen Hurts, you're looking under in this game. And that also means you might want to consider waiting, because most of these are probably going to get pushed a little bit higher before we start.
So full disclosure, is this opened at 1? I was able to get the Eagles at 1 into my account. I feel like this was a scenario in which I have to just go back, and I basically had a talk with myself over the weekend as well, right? Where I had the Eagles, and Steven, you and I do the power rankings for thelines.com. And I had the Eagles, for by far the longest out of anybody in here as the number 1 team in the NFL, right? I mean, I put them up there. I kept them up there for the majority of the season. The Jalen Hurts injury came along. I rightfully moved them out of the number 1 spot, because you have an injured quarterback. You're not the number 1 team in the NFL anymore. Now they come back. He's not even listed on the injury report last week at all. He looks pretty much like Jalen Hurts. Now, again, as Adam mentioned, wasn't necessarily asked to do a ton, but when he was, looked like Jalen Hurts. Same deal this week, not on the injury report. Everything's perfectly fine. It looks like we have a guy that is pretty healthy. Now, is he 100%? I think the answer we all know is no, but 85, 90% of Jalen Hurts is pretty damn good. And so I had to have a talk with myself over the weekend. I'm like, if I had this team number one in my power rankings the entire season, basically, why then did I not put them? Why did I not reestablish them then at number one once the quarterback situation worked itself out for them? And so I just had to go back to that, and I have them again, the best team in the NFL. And I think that if you look at this, there's a couple different concerns, I think, on the 49ers side of things. I mean, listen, we are talking, they're going to play for sure, but McCaffrey's missing practice. Elijah Mitchell's missing practice. Debo's missing practice. We know at least for sure they're nicked up. Like they're going to play, but they're nicked up going in there. That's three of your playmakers. And for whatever reason it is, I mean, this Eagles team has despite like no massive games really from anybody. I mean, like you look like through the box scores, you look through everything. It's like, you don't see these just massive games time after time after time. They just play a balanced form of football and get things won. And so I took him at one. I'm sure you were on the 49ers side of things here. So let's talk this thing through here. And how concerned are you about those offensive skill position injuries?
I'm pretty concerned. I definitely want to see the final injury report here. As we record Friday afternoon East Coast time, we don't have it yet. So I think the guy I'm most concerned about possibly not playing is Eli Mitchell, and we'll get into angles on that on props here in a minute. But to your point, I think, the one thing about the exercise that we do with the power rankings every week is that we're forced to put one team over the other. And I think in reality, I kind of have all four of these teams basically the same. And I think the Super Bowl look ahead, I think the Super Bowl look ahead lines dictate that. I mean, we're looking at 1 point spreads either way, no matter which matchup we get in the Super Bowl. So, I think this game is extremely fascinating. I agree with Adam. I think this is about as evenly matched as you can get. I understand the line movement for the Eagles because you could argue that they basically had a bye and a half in the playoffs with the game they had against the Giants there. So if it got to 3, I think that's a bridge too far. And I think, we've already seen the buyback on that if it gets to 3. So I'm in teaser zone here with Adam. I took the teaser as well with the Niners. I think we're in for a close game here. And for the people who have said all season long that the Eagles have been at least partially, maybe significantly, a product of an easy schedule, that's out the window at this point, because the Philly offense may have played one of the 5 easiest schedules of opposing defenses, but so did the 49ers. And the Philly defense may have played one of the 5 easiest schedules of opposing offenses, but so did the 49ers. So whatever, move past that, start handicapping the matchups here, looking at the on-field matchups, and it's close everywhere by weighted DVOA. Number 6 Philadelphia offense versus the number 2 San Francisco defense. The Niners defense is top 5 in both rush and pass DVOA. San Francisco's offense, number 2 in weighted DVOA. Philly defense, number 9 in overall weighted DVOA. So that here, though, inside that is where I think there might be the matchup advantage, because the Eagles' defense against the run is number 21 by DVOA, even though they had Jordan Davis for the first half of the year and got him back at the end, and also brought in Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph off the street. They still have been a below average rushing defense. It's just the game that they lost to Washington and a couple games where they gave up a lot of yards. In that window, they were one of the worst. They're not one of the worst anymore, but they're still below average. And you're playing a really good rushing offense in San Francisco here, one that is diversified, even if Christian McCaffrey is banged up. We've already seen in the postseason them mixing in Deebo Samuel into the backfield as well. He's at least practicing, so he should be fine to go at least in some capacity here. So I think this is a really even matchup, but I'm also not convinced that anybody can stop the Eagles' rushing attack, Matt, because what stood out to me most this week is the fact that when Jalen Hurts is on the field for the Eagles offense, they're not only first in rush EPA, but the gap between them and the second best team in rush EPA is the same as the gap between the second and 18th best team. Same thing with success rate running the ball when Jalen Hurts is on the field. The gap between the Eagles and first and the second best team is the same as the gap between the second and the 14th best team in rush success rate. So they might just be unstoppable, to be honest with you. And I can't wait to see how this plays out. But, it's so close that the teaser leg just makes too much sense. It's a traditional Wong teaser with a total in the 40s. So we'll see how it plays out beyond that.
Yeah, Adam, if we take a look just from a philosophical standpoint of these teams, one of the interesting things is we see if Sirianni and company want to make a pretty drastic change to how they run the offense just in general. We know that the pass rush and we know that the pressure rate for the 49ers is incredibly high. And you look and no NFL offense left their tackles on an island. And if you're wondering what I'm talking about, like didn't chip with a back or didn't leave a tight end in or anything like that. No team in the NFL left their tackles on an island more than the Eagles, and they did it more than anybody by a lot, right? Like it was, they were just expected to block and let these guys go run their routes and do their things like that as you know, way up into nearly 80% of the time. Where if you're talking about like on the low end, like the Dolphins, like chip and things and stuff like that, like 45% of the time. So we're literally talking about like a massive difference to where the Eagles are and some of the teams that are on the lower end. So does that philosophy change, right? Do we get more, you know, guys staying in? And so that means there's one less guy running a route, right? I mean, these backs aren't running routes, or Dallas Goedert is at least having to chip before he runs his route. And there's different little things that go on in this chess match here, which I do think is going to be pretty interesting, right? From that aspect. And then also from the other aspect of, do the 49ers just basically say, hey, Brock, we're not going to ask you to do much. We understand this defense is good. We're going to run, and you're not going to have to throw until we need you to. And so if everything to me just lends towards an under. I mean, it does not seem like a high scoring. It does not seem like an affair that where we're going to be looking back and go, how the hell this thing played a, 34-31 or something like that. Like that would absolutely blow me away.
100%, Matt. And I think to underscore what you're talking about, we talk about the offensive line of the Eagles as one dominant unit, right? And to go to what you just said, they have both of their tackles rated in the top 16 by Pro Football Focus for the season in Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata. To all accounts, Lane Johnson is going to be able to be what he has been coming up this week. He had the opportunity, maybe more than any other player in football, to get the rest and make the difference for his team with getting the bye. Because I have a friend who is an Eagles fan who basically starts lighting candles every time Lane Johnson is hurt because he knows the difference that he makes to that offensive line. I'm with you, Matt, on the idea that I see this as a game that plays toward the under. And if it's a game that you see as the Eagles or the Niners being able to be successful, do you see that as either of them being successful through the air? That's right. Really not the way that this sets up, right? They're teams that want to run the football ultimately. So 99% of the game scripts you come up with, to me, point toward under.
Steven, from a prop perspective, if we look at this, I mean, it's pretty interesting. If you believe in the fact, if the game narrative that we're talking about in the ideal game state for probably both of these teams does play out, and you believe that Jalen Hurts is healthy, you take a look at him and you start to question yourself and you start to wonder, like, okay, this is look, if you don't win this game, then you go home. I can't imagine there will be any limitations whatsoever at all on Jalen Hurts. I imagine he gets cut loose early and often. I mean, there are 45.5s out there on his rushing total. I mean, if we're sitting here talking about this next week and we're, reviewing these games and Jalen Hurts has 14 carries in this game, it would not surprise me at all, like in the absolute least bit. Right. And so I don't know, man. I think that this is I think these numbers are priced in that he's still kind of hurt. And I'm of the mindset that even if he is, I don't think it matters, right? Because again, it's like you lose, you go home. I mean, this is it. And so, man, you're asking 46 yards out of Jalen Hurts. I could easily see him getting 10 designed, 12 designed carries, another 2 or 3 scrambles and stuff. Like, that number to me, I think I'm just going to have to come in and just on principle play the over. And if he is hurt and if he is limited, then so be it. And I'm just, I'll just be wrong.
Yeah, I agree with you. Those eye-popping rushing stats I gave you were in large part because Jalen Hurts was an effective rusher. It's an extra body that the defense has to account for when the quarterback is an electric rusher the way Jalen Hurts is. And on top of that, it's going to be hard to pass the ball in this game. Both of these teams are top 5 in pass rush win rate, despite being in the bottom half of the league in blitz rate. So if you do the numbers game here, you're basically playing 5-on-7 in the passing game and offense. You have 5 pass catchers if you include the running back. It's 4-on-7 if the running back is in protection. And the 49ers, some of this year have had trouble stopping the pass against some opponents. Well, lately, they've just been relying on that front 4 to get pressure and taking the 7 guys dropping back and double teaming guys. They had multiple double teams in the Dallas game. Brian Baldinger did a great breakdown of this. And some of those double teams that they had weren't even on CeeDee Lamb. They had their middle linebacker, Fred Warner, one-on-one on CeeDee Lamb, and he's so damn good that it was effective because he could do everything. Fred Warner is an incredible defensive player. So everything points to rushing in this game for me. You mentioned Jalen Hurts. I'll go with Deebo Samuel because Christian McCaffrey's banged up, didn't practice back-to-back. He says he's going to play. Eli Mitchell's, when you're dealing with a groin injury, that might be a little bit tougher to be effective as a runner. And we know that when necessary, Kyle Shanahan has no issue taking Deebo Samuel, one of his best wide receivers, and lining him up in the backfield. He's already started to do it more often in this postseason. And I'm taking over 20.5 rushing yards on Deebo Samuel. He's done that in 4 of the past 8 games, even though he hasn't been asked to do it nearly as much as last year. He went over 20.5 rushing yards in all 3 playoff games a year ago and 7 of his final 8 games. We know he's an electric rusher when asked to be one. And I like the fact that we're getting pretty good plus money on an anytime touchdown with Deebo as well at plus 170 or better, because now I'm confident that he might even be the goal line back in this offense for this game in particular if both McCaffrey and Eli Mitchell are banged up.
Adam, to kind of put a bow on this as well, like in the most likely game state of what we believe happening here, of lower scoring, lots of rushing, things like, who does that benefit in your opinion? Who does that benefit the most? Like, what player do you single out? I mean, again, knowing what we know about the Eli Mitchell situation, the Christian McCaffrey situation, whether Jalen Hurts is or isn't hurt or something like that, is there somebody that you believe is the beneficiary of everything that we believe to happen and the stuff that we know about maybe some injuries being out there?
So are you talking about someone to play an over on in particular, right? You're looking for someone who benefits the most in terms of that's a guy I look at to be able to get more yards. Okay. I'm going to give you one that I think is a little bit outside the box. And I don't think a lot of people talk about it because I don't think it's often something that's been needed out of him. But right now, Brock Purdy's rushing yards are at 8.5. And if you believe that this Philadelphia pass rush is going to affect Brock Purdy and that the San Francisco 49ers know that it's going to affect Brock Purdy, I would think that the coaching of Brock Purdy this week is going to be, when that clock goes off in your head, get the hell out of there. Do not wait to try to make the throw. And I think you could see the sort of thing where Brock Purdy is gaining 2 or 3 yards a few times just by taking off when the pocket breaks down, not trying to throw the ball away, just trying to get something short, that you really could find something on a zone read kind of play where Brock Purdy takes it and gets it all in one rush. So I know that you probably would want to say, well, how do we play the roulette wheel with all of the other options involved? And I'll tell you what, I'm going to take it back the other direction and say, who do I think it takes away from the most? Everyone's going to be on Dallas Goedert this week after the week that he had last week. Guys, there might not be a bigger night and day in all of professional football than what the New York Giants have at linebacker and what Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw are at linebacker for the San Francisco 49ers. And so I think you have to look very carefully at that if you're going to look at him. I think I want to get the most updated number that I can get here on receptions for him. 4.5 right now. even juice on both sides, I would absolutely play under on 4.5 receptions for Dallas Goedert.
End of the day, guys, listen, now that this thing has gotten up to 2.5, like we said, I mean, even though I think the Eagles win the game, a teaser leg to me makes absolutely perfect sense. I mean, it just, again, if we think that this is low scoring, plays tight, whatever, I mean, everything that I'm saying, all the narratives that I'm giving play into that sort of result, then 8.5 in that sort of scenario is absolutely what the bet you'd want to have in your account as well. So again, like I can have conviction on the Eagles winning while also saying having a plus 8.5 in your account is also a good bet. Right. And so like, I think that I do want to explain that even though I am on the Eagles side here, that I think a plus 8.5 in your account is certainly something that is plus EV.